Hi, this is Chris Marchand of Between the Songs podcast. I'm here with Joe Cook to tell you about another podcast we've created, and we hope, if you've enjoyed Between the Songs, that you'll enjoy this one too.
It's called Nostalgic Future Podcast, and that's what it's all about. Chris and I dive deep into our nostalgia, all the pop culture stuff that we grew up with, and we examine how it's influenced our lives and how that continues today and into the future.
So join us for fun discussions about some of our favorite movies, television shows, music, books. Really, nothing is off limits. We even have special guests on from time to time to talk about some of their nostalgic obsessions.
Check out Nostalgic Future Podcast, available now on all the big podcasting apps, and you can also follow us on social media. It's Nostalgic Future Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and we're at Past Future Pod on Twitter.
Nostalgic Future Podcast, where the past is the only way forward. Welcome once again to Rich Mullins Between the Songs podcast. This is not our second episode. This is actually a bonus episode. What we did in our first episode ran so long. Our first episode was actually 2 hours long, and we still had to cut about an hour of material out of our first episode. And so we've decided to give you an extra, a bonus, of some more material that we wanted to share with you in between the release of our next official episode. And Joe, tell us really quickly, what is this bonus episode about? What are we focusing on?
Well, if people downloaded the first episode, which we know they have, have we hit 2,000 downloads yet, Chris?
We have not hit 2,000 downloads. We've got 1,800, or a little over 1,800 downloads. So that's great.
That is just phenomenal, and so we just want to thank everyone who's listened so far. But if you did download the first episode, you realize that apparently we're very long-winded. And the show clocked in at 2 hours long, and so what happened was this particular portion that we're going to present today was from the segment at the end of the show where we talk about some of these Rich Mullins events and different projects that are happening. Well, we got into a conversation about this petition that is up on change.org that one of our friends, Andrew Montonera, put up a petition asking LeSEA Broadcasting to release these tapes that they have said that they have in their kind of storage area of unreleased Rich Mullins footage. Well, Andrew had heard about this footage, contacted them, went through all the, typical hoops of trying to track down this footage, and then he kind of hit a brick wall. And so where most of us would just kind of say, okay, well, I tried. Andrew put up a petition, got over 200 people to sign it, and so that was where we were at when we recorded a couple weeks ago. That this petition was up there. We were talking about it, but we kind of went off on a little bit of a rabbit trail. Mm-hmm. So we cut it from the program just for time purposes. And then what happened was Andrew actually heard back from LeSEA and got kind of a response from them, pretty incredible response, actually. And so what we're going to do for you right now is we're going to play this portion of the program that we cut out, and then afterward, we're going to catch up with Andrew Montonera and find out where he's at with LeSEA Broadcasting and this rare lost Rich Mullins footage that he has located.
All right, so let's go there now.
I wanted to mention the petition that has been going around on Facebook.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so this is the LeSEA Broadcasting petition. For any of our listeners who don't know what I'm talking about, our friend Andrew Montonera has been on a mission over the past 6 or 7 months, reaching out to LeSEA Broadcasting out in Indiana. If you aren't familiar with them, they produce Live from Studio B. It's Harvest Television. They are the ones who own the footage of the Rich Mullins Live from Studio B concert that was released as part of the Here in America CD, DVD set back in 2003. And there's also some footage on that DVD of Rich, along with Beaker, at a retreat in South Bend from 1994, spring of 94. And you may remember some of the bits, the driving without headlights bit that was released on that DVD. That's all from this retreat that Rich led at LeSEA over a couple days in 1994. So here's the deal with that footage. For a long time, we've known a couple things. That we don't believe the full Live from Studio B concert. There were several different sources for this concert that have been out over the years. I can tell you that as somebody who has spent a good part of the last 7 years looking through rare and unreleased Rich Mullins recordings, I've probably come in contact with 6 or 7 different sources for the Studio B concert from different broadcasts throughout the years, and of course the officially released Here in America DVD. Well, at least 6 songs were cut out of the DVD. Songs that had been broadcast were not released on the DVD, including what blows my mind, why on earth it was not released, but the best live performance of The Color Green that I've ever heard was performed at that concert. That was one of the best performances of that concert, and for whatever reason it was cut out, along with a bunch of other songs, including songs from Rick Elias and Jimmy Abegg. They also performed their own music at that show. And what we know is that Mark Robertson has said that he also performed a song. That's never surfaced. So we suspect that there are more songs that have never surfaced. And then this retreat that happened in 1994, we know that Rich also performed an entire concert, at least, worth of music at that retreat. The only song from that has ever surfaced was a performance of him and Beaker doing Ready for the Storm. And so all that footage is online. You can find all of it online, most of it on the Ragamuffin archive. All the retreat footage that's out there, you can, I think Andrew Montonera has on his own YouTube channel, you can go see what's out there. The Here in America DVD has long gone out of print. It's another album that is just kind of hard to come by these days because they just have not.
These days. Sorry.
See, now we have to pay royalties, Chris.
Oh my goodness. So, so yeah, you don't mind if I randomly sing anytime that you mention a Rich Mullins. You even if you're totally an accident, I will just start singing the Rich Mullins lyric. Okay, is that okay?
There you go.
Okay. I can't help myself.
All that background info to say that Andrew Montonera has went and he reached out about 6 or 7 months ago to LeSEA Broadcasting and asked about this footage. Well, Andrew actually found somebody there that was really helpful and was kind of going back and forth with him for a couple months. And this guy actually found all of the Rich Mullins footage. It had been sitting on a shelf, some of it untouched for over 20 years, just sitting on a shelf and in old formats. Some of it they don't even have the equipment to transfer it. But it's there. They've got it all. And all in all, I think it's 21 or 22 tapes of material. Now, that's a lot more than we have released. We know that. So, Andrew continued contacting them, and they were really gracious with him. But when it came down to it at the end of the day, they actually approached it as a licensing thing. They, I think, took it that Andrew wanted to license the material, which, if you're going to license, footage, it can be pretty expensive if you're going to release it for money. Andrew's intent was not so much to release it for money, but he wanted to just make sure it was preserved, that it didn't sit on a shelf collecting dust and rotting away. He wanted to see that the footage would be digitized. He was hoping that they would make it available. And so they approached it as a licensing thing. Andrew offered them about $400 for all the footage. And they counter-offered him at $100 a minute.
$100 a minute. Everyone,
$100 a minute.
let that settle in. Let that settle in. $100 a minute to digitize it.
So I took a little calculator out and I started adding up, just an estimate of what that comes to for 22 tapes. If say each tape is, 20, or say each tape is a couple hours, it was like $100,000.
Yeah.
For all
it's gold, Jerry. It's gold.
it's gold.
Goodness
it's
me.
the best. So, all that to say, Andrew didn't have 100 G's, in his bank account to readily dispose on that. So he did the next best thing. He started a petition.
Okay. Yeah.
And all that to say, the petition has been online now for a couple weeks. And it is, if you go to change.org and you search for LeSEA Broadcasting, the petition's called LeSEA Broadcasting, that's LESEA, release the complete tapes of Rich Mullins. As of today, there are 211 signatures on this petition. And the cool thing is that without getting into any details, I will just say that LeSEA is aware of the petition.
Mm-hmm.
They have been in touch with Andrew,
mm-hmm.
and their response has been very encouraging, to say the least. So, all that to say, go online to change.org. I really think that it is worth just taking a moment to go sign this thing, because they are hearing you, and they know now that Rich's fans actually care that this footage just doesn't rot on their shelf.
Yeah.
And so their response has been very gracious to Andrew and very encouraging. And it's also worth, I think, if you go to the petition, there's some phone numbers there, and it's worth just giving them an email or a call and just say, hey, we support the petition. We'd like to see the Rich Mullins footage.
Yes. So that number is on Andrew's petition. You can call them, leave a message or an email, right? Yeah, it's there. It's there on the petition itself.
Absolutely. And they are, the one thing that they did make clear to Andrew is that they have the broadcast rights for this material. So if they restore it, if they digitize it,
mm-hmm.
They can broadcast and stream it.
Mm-hmm.
So it is worth just telling them, hey, LeSEA Broadcasting, we signed the petition. We'd really love to see this.
Now, my perspective on this can go one of two ways. One is the ways that kind of it makes us look like we're insane rabid fans, which is this: we're hoarders. So we have all this extra Rich Mullins material, and it's killing us inside that it hasn't seen the light of day. Now, okay, so that's the more the negative approach. But here's what I would like to say. My perspective on this, it's the same as it is for all of Beth Lutz's old songs. I look at this like a librarian, like an archivist. It's like, what should be allowed into the Library of Congress? Well, we should take the greatest works of the greatest artists, and we should have all of their works too. And so a lot of this, and the reason that we're so supportive of Andrew's project is because we want to become archivists. And I'm glad all those years ago you used that word, the Ragamuffin archive, because what you're trying to do is you are making a list, making an archive of what exists out there. And we're living in an amazing age when you can say, you know what, I wonder what Rich Mullins had to say about Brothers Keeper, the album. And now I didn't know a Moody radio interview existed about Brothers Keeper until you told me. I was like, yeah, I've got this interview about the Brothers Keeper album. He did this great interview on Moody Radio. And I go, what? I didn't know it existed. And so what we don't know, it's kind of like Donald Rumsfeld. We don't know what we don't know. And so we don't know what exists on these LeSEA Broadcasting. There could be some really interesting insights to his music or just teachings about God and the Bible. We're kind of fascinated. What are on these tapes? And so the archivists, the librarians in us, we want this to see the light of day so we can know as fans, is there anything more? Is there any insights worth knowing about?
Well, and the other thing about this, to take it even a step further, is not to go back to the whole Bob Dylan analogy, but if this were Bob Dylan, if this was this, recently discovered cache of unreleased Bob Dylan recordings, that would be treated like gold.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Rich Mullins, he happened to just be trapped into that subgenre of contemporary Christian music.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of less valued because it's Christian music. And but the fact of the matter is, this is valuable material, at least to somebody like me who deeply appreciates him as an artist. And I think there's a lot of people out there who do appreciate these artists. Unfortunately, it seems as though, and I don't want to get off into a rabbit trail, it seems as though the one entity that somewhat doesn't appreciate the artist, or at least the legacy of the artist, is the industry itself. That, the Gospel Music Association should be the ones calling LeSEA Broadcasting to archive this stuff, not Andrew Montonera, not you and me.
Yeah. That's actually part of the problem is we're trying to push Sisyphus's rock up the mountain, and we're like, come on, somebody help us push this rock. It's like we're trying to open these doors. It's so difficult. Whereas, I just shared this article with you. A supposed lost Neil Young album is coming out this summer. It's one of those albums that he maybe recorded and it just, for some reason, never saw the light of day. Guess what? There are no fans weeping and gnashing of their teeth to get this Neil Young album out. Somebody in a record label said, hey, we got an old Neil Young album? This is a no-brainer. Let's just put it out there. Of course this should see the light of day. And the same thing could be said for numerous other artists. I just heard of an old artist from...
Dion.
Yeah, Dion.
Same thing. Dion has an unreleased album from 1967 that is being released this year.
Exactly. Bang, just out there, just like that. Nobody had to claw their way to the record exec's office to see this happen. And again, of course, yes, there is a much higher demand, because it does come down to money. There is a much higher demand for these quote-unquote secular artists. In the same way, come on, what more can be done? Is there something that can be done for these artists that are not just decent, but actually quite renowned?
Yeah, and the thing that I've never understood, and this is, I know this is not the answer for you, Chris, so I'm not suggesting that. But the fact that these things are not even released digitally.
Oh, sure, sure, yeah.
Kind of floors me. Now I know you're not looking for digital. You're looking for vinyl. You're looking for a good package. But the fact that it could inexpensively be released digitally,
that's right,
and at least it would be on iTunes out there, and the fact that it's not, and that so many Christian and yes, many of these back catalogs of albums in Christian music have slowly begun to surface digitally in the last decade. And so you can find some really great old Christian albums digitally, and that's cool. But some albums are deserving of a little bit better treatment. And if I don't want to be too biased. But, as Jimmy said in the interview, well, if he has one shot at it, a liturgy, a legacy, and a Ragamuffin band, that would be the one that he would want to see released.
Right.
Because that album is deserving of more than just being on iTunes sitting there.
Right. So, Joe, with this humble podcast, Rich Mullins Between the Song, we are pushing the rock up the hill, hoping we can make it to the top of the mountain. But what we're actually hoping is there's a giant out there that can just pluck that little rock and just set it up there nice and daintily, nice and easily. That was easy. Is there a record company that can actually open the doors to seeing Rich Mullins and other artists streaming on in to seeing their artists find their music find new light, new ears for us?
Yeah, we're trying to, in a way, and without being too arrogant about it, challenge the Christian music industry to sort of take care of their own.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Via Skype right now is a good friend of ours and really one of my best friends in the world. This guy here, now since I started Ragamuffin Archive 7 years ago, there's probably no person that I know who has taken more of a vested interest in rare and lost Rich Mullins recordings than this guy here. For me, it was always kind of a hobby. For this guy, it's a passion, and he has just proved that to all of us, and he's going to tell you about it now. Would you welcome to the program, Andrew Montonera. Hey, Andrew, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Joe and Chris. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Andrew, it's nice to have you on because when we recorded our part of the first episode, we were thinking, we wonder what's going to happen with this whole LeSEA thing. And there you went and actually went there. Like, it was kind of a surprise. We didn't think it would move so fast.
I didn't think it would happen either, honestly.
Tell us what happened, because apparently you reached LeSEA, they became aware of it. What happened?
So last week I was actually able to get in contact with a guy named Chuck Huffman, and he's the head broadcasting manager at LeSEA, and he oversees all the video and production there. And so last Wednesday, it would have been June 7th, I actually got to travel from Chicago to South Bend, Indiana, and look over about 9 hours of unreleased material.
Well, there's about 22 tapes, you said, right? Just give us an idea of what you got to look at out of all that. Is there still a lot left that you haven't had a chance to see, or are there duplicate tapes? What do they have there?
What I got to look through there was 5 tapes, big deck tapes, and one of them was live from Studio B, and the other 4 were a 2-day seminar that Rich and Beaker gave. And so they brought me in. I introduced myself to the Chuck Huffman. He was very kind. I can't say enough positive things about LeSEA, and even for letting me have this opportunity, because to me it's still so incredible that it happened, and just for the opportunity as a fan. And they brought me into a little room with a TV monitor and 2 deck players, tape players, and they just had the 5 tapes sitting there on the side, and I was just able to reach for the tape. It is so. I can't even, words can't describe it. I was handling V-Master tapes on an original machine.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, yeah, if you just let one of us know if the tape gets caught, just in case, because otherwise, it's gone. But what I was able to look through, I gotta say, and I want the fans to know this, it really is the definitive, what I consider to be as a fan, and having looked over so much Rich Mullins material over the past few years, it really kind of is the definitive footage of Rich. And it's, if you were to kind of make a quote or saying about the footage, I'd say Rich Mullins and a Ragamuffin band like you've never seen them before.
How much of the Studio B footage have we not seen?
So what's interesting is there's about half an hour of footage before the entire Live from Studio B show. And it's kind of like the Ragamuffins pre-show. And it's literally just camera. It's them goofing around, kind of. And then Rich starts out by saying, okay, we're going to perform 4 love songs, which is pretty funny, right? And this is before the concert, remember. So Jimmy Abegg starts out with Small Touch of Love.
Oh, great song.
Which I got to say, I mean, yeah, it's a solid recording. Again, all of this I'm talking about is soundboard, quality audio, and, the video's on point. It's high-quality production. And then they give it over to Mark Robertson, and he performs Monster Truck.
Oh, cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Jimmy comes over to Rich, on the piano bench, and they're just, rocking their heads, and, the entire audience is getting into it. It is so great.
Small Touch of Love is an old Jimmy Abegg solo song. Monster Truck is an old This Train song that was Mark Robertson's band at that time, aside from the Ragamuffins.
Yeah, and then Rich does We Are Not As Strong As We Think We Are. The next song is, they give it to Rick Elias, and he performs Dance With Me Tonight.
Is that one of his songs, or what is that?
It's from the soundtrack of That Thing You Do, that Tom Hanks movie.
Okay.
Yeah, he did it at Cornerstone 97, Chris.
Okay.
You remember that?
I was joking with Joe, like last week, I was like, you guys remember Cornerstone '97 better than I do, because you've seen all these tapes, and I've not really gone through and looked at all the Cornerstone '97 tapes. But I was there, I promise you.
So that's all before the concert, which I found to be really interesting. And then Rich says, now we're going to do some religious music.
Okay.
So now here's one that was not released. The Ragamuffins and Rich perform While the Nations Rage.
Really?
Yes. And Rich is on piano, singing to it, with the Ragamuffins backing him up. So they do a ton of these songs, and then they do Creed. That's where it kind of ends. But then Rich does all this kind of post-concert thing, where he does, I'm going to sing, I'm going to shout, praise the Lord, like he normally do in his last tour. But all this post-concert stuff was to get certain camera shots of the audience. So none of this is actually filmed. Like, Rich is not shown. But the audio is fine. So it's really interesting. And then, I don't know if you guys are both, I'm sure Joe is, but are you guys both familiar with the hidden track from the Here in America CD?
Was I right?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the thing, Chris. The hidden track on the Here in America CD, Rich tells this story, and if you wait like 10 minutes after the last song, you'll hear it come on. I have long suspected that was an outtake from Live from Studio B.
Oh.
Now, my question is, in it, he mentions we're going to do a song from Canticle. Did they do a song from Canticle?
They did. They did Heaven is Waiting.
Right.
Cool. With Mitch singing, I assume?
Yeah, Mitch is singing. I don't know if Rich was playing guitar. I assume he was, but that's what I was able to see of Live from Studio B.
Now we're getting to the really juicy footage here. This 2-day seminar from 1994. What do you got for us, Andrew? What did you see? What happened there that week?
A lot of good stuff. It's so unique. What I find unique as a fan is it's February of 94 was kind of a turning point. I mean, 94 in general was kind of a turning point in Rich's career. He was almost finished with college. It was kind of the transition between, Reed Arvin producing his work from Liturgy, and then him and the Ragamuffins would go on to produce Brothers Keeper. So there's 4 tapes, and each tape is 2 hours long. Sadly, they're not complete. So they do start up suddenly, and they cut out suddenly. So, which is kind of disappointing, but again, it's like 8 hours of really, really good footage.
Before you get into the songs, I'm a little curious. What's the context of all those people there? Were they kids? Were they college students? Why wasn't I given the invitation to be there? I'm just curious, like, what's the context of this seminar? I guess I didn't really fully get it when I got my Here in America DVD.
Well, I guess Rich would occasionally do these seminars. I was actually speaking with a woman on Facebook recently who attended the seminar. And it's interesting because she had talked to Rich and Beaker later on after this had all been done. And Rich's original intention was actually to release this seminar like on tape, on video. The context, I honestly don't know. I guess they would just do these teachings and concerts. I've heard they did others in, I think, Michigan, but it was all age groups. I mean, there were teenagers and people all the way into maybe their 70s.
Okay.
The seminar. So Rich talked a lot. It was a lot of Rich teaching. Beaker taught. They would do like a Q&A session. And they would also, interestingly, and this is what makes the footage so unique, they would bring people like up on stage with them and, use them in the involvement in their teaching. And also, in some of the songs they'd use people, which we'll get to, but I find that to be some of the most intriguing performances. The one thing that stuck out to me the most was there is on the end of tape 2, Rich performs Doubly Good to You in perfect quality, picture, audio. It's not the greatest performance, and he has a hard time remembering the lyrics, but that probably is the one, major performance from all that footage that does indeed exist. He took it upon request.
I got a comment on Ragamuffin Archive years ago from somebody saying that Rich played that song there that night by request. I can't remember if it was the guy that made the request or not, but so we've long heard that this existed, so now you've actually seen it with your own eyes.
Yes, I have. And he tells a story. He tells a really funny story before it about how, I guess, Amy Grant changed up kind of some of the lyrics. And it's kind of funny watching the movie Ragamuffin, because I guess this did actually happen. They were in the same building or in one of each other's homes, and Rich was performing it, and she happened to be in the same room and overhear it and say, "Oh, I want to record that." And so Amy brought a cassette tape. She got a cassette tape out and actually recorded him singing it, like right then on the spot. And then they went into the studio to record, I think it is Straight Ahead was her album. And then she was trying to play back the cassette and hear Mullins' words, but she couldn't do it. So they had to get Rich to personally, handwrite his lyrics and send him into the studio for Amy to read. And his handwriting was so bad that she just misread the lyric and sang it that way.
Yeah, it's only a couple words. It's a real small change.
Yeah, I can't even remember the exact words, but it's very minor.
So it wasn't that Rich originally called the song "Triply Good" to you. That wasn't the original title.
No. But he made he made a comment like, "Oh, now and since I'm single, thank the Lord," or something like that. He'd joke about it. And then it's funny afterwards. After he does the final chord or whatnot, he's like, "Oh, I got another funny story about that song." Then the tape cuts. So that song barely made the cut onto the tape. It's still pretty good that it exists.
So what other songs were performed?
Rich and Beaker both performed "Lord, I Lift Your Name on High" as part of a worship, leading the audience attendees in worship. Somebody requests "Holy, Holy, Holy," the hymn. Yeah. And Rich says, "I can't remember the lyrics. Can someone help me?" And so this guy, maybe in his mid-late 20s, comes up and sings it perfectly. It's so good. That was incredible to see. And he knew all the verses. And then Rich joins in with him singing. And Rich is on piano while this is happening. So he's able to perfectly sync this guy singing to his piano playing.
Now, Chris, if you're that guy, how bad do you want a copy of that tape?
Yeah, give this guy a copy. That'd be nice. I guess you have to find him, right? You'd have to locate who this dude was, right? I don't know.
Well, maybe he's listening to Between the Songs.
I think we can assume he's listening to Between the Songs. Yes.
But then he joins in with the last verse. So I thought that was kind of funny. Rich says he didn't know the verses. It almost seemed as if, after thinking about it in my mind, maybe Rich just wanted to invite a guy up to sing with him.
Yeah,
kind of.
It's funny to not know the verses, but then pretty much know the chords too. So he knew how to play the music.
Rich does a song. I think it's an old hymn. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Rich performs this song. I think it's called "Jacob's Ladder." Do you know if that's an old hymn or not?
I don't know. Okay, that sounds interesting.
I don't know. And then Rich joins in, and I guess it's We're Climbing or something like that. So I had never heard that song before.
What you need to do is you need to look it up on hymnary.org. And there is a tune. It is the tune "Jacob's Ladder." Yes. So it's out there.
Okay.
There you go. African American Heritage Hymnal. You can look it up.
So you found the song?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, but he performs that on piano, so that was a very unique performance.
Man, okay.
The third tape is entirely seminar.
What can you tell us that is included in the seminar that you saw that wasn't included on the DVD? What kind of material does he get into that would be interesting?
That wasn't included on the DVD?
Yeah.
Or what what did they talk about in the seminar?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things I find about Rich Mullins is he seemed to be drawing from an incredible well of knowledge and also of stories both of his own life and then just things he would draw from other places. And so I think maybe the problem with talking about, hey, what did Mullins talk about, is he probably talked about everything. That's what I would imagine. It's just like he ran over here. I guess kind of what I'm wondering is did anything stick out as far as what he taught about, any stories that he told, that kind of thing?
Well, I gotta say I mostly skipped through a lot of the seminar stuff.
Yeah, because
I will say I only had actually about 4 hours there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, you had to zip through things. Yeah.
Right. I did look. I mean, I looked through 9 hours of material, but it was only in about a 4 hour,
wow,
maybe 3.5 hour time span.
Okay.
So, well, this 1 hour seminar, was this the day that he's wearing the ugly red sweater?
It is. That's the second day.
Yeah, it's very important.
Right. Absolutely. And I will say, the last tape, the fourth tape, and I still can't believe I was watching and using the master tape. In my opinion, it is the greatest Rich concert ever to be captured on video. The set list is phenomenal. He starts out with The Other Side of the World, with him on piano, with The Wonder, While the Nations Rage, which I quote, he dedicated to Mrs. Clinton and her husband, performing. Yeah. And then he does Land of My Sojourn. And then the next song is actually my favorite performance from the entire collection of videos. He performs Verge of a Miracle. This is at a time when I felt, I had thought he had really kind of moved on from doing that song. He performs Every Man on piano. And then he does another very unique one with audience participation. He does Screen Door. So it's on piano, but he has about, I want to say, a dozen people stand behind him and sing like the harmony, like background vocal parts, like the doo-wop, doo-wop. Yeah, so he has people with sheet like music singing to the song with him and performing those background tracks.
How terrible were they, Andrew?
It was not great. It wasn't that good. No offense to if any of you were performing that, and I saw this, but it is unique. It is certainly unique that it exists. So I'm probably like halfway done with the set list. There's 25 songs, 26 if you want to argue.
Oh, that's incredible.
He plays a little piano part at the end.
I guess, and then, is that all the footage you got to watch?
That is.
Okay, let's get to the heart of what everybody's wondering. You've just told everybody what you've seen. You've got 216 signatures on this petition.
Yes.
I guess what those 216 people are wondering right now is, when are we going to get to see this, Andrew? What's happening with this footage now?
Well, I had some good discussions with the people at LeSEA, and I can say this for sure. It's going to be digitized, which is, great. I wouldn't say that my petition is a success as of yet. I won't make it a quote-unquote success until there's some new material out there.
Right. Did they give you any sense of a time frame when it might be up?
They did not, but they said they're likely going to release it either via YouTube or their website.
Okay.
So, hope that's some exciting news.
That is really exciting news. Now, when they say release it via YouTube, are they talking about the 94 concert?
Yeah, like they're going to try and release all the never-before-seen stuff.
Now, see, what's interesting about this, and this is where it becomes very, we would nervously wait, is they're going to edit it. They're going to decide.
They might.
They're going to listen through it and go, yep, I like this one, I like that one. ... And then, so we don't exactly know what will eventually come our way. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I do care about the songs. I love all the songs, but I'm really interested in his teachings. I'm really interested in his stories, because I'm the kind of guy where I'm like, he's drawing from Augustine there, or he's drawing from C.S. Lewis here, and so I don't want 2.5 minute snippets of his teaching on. It's like I want the whole thing. I don't know. I'm just going to be selfish and say that. So I don't have any control over that though.
Well, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't want them to be edited either.
But I will take what we can get. Right? That's fine. Well, to wrap up, if that's all right, I think what's nice to know is it's a relief to know it's there, and it's a relief to know that eventually we'll see some of it, and that's nice. And so thank you so much. Do you feel like you've been a thorn in their side long enough? I mean, it seems like you had a good meet with them. It wasn't tense. They were very kind. Is that right?
I did, for sure. Chuck Strantz, who knew Rich, he was invited by Chuck Huffman to come over to the station and meet with me. He wasn't even at the station, and he told me later that for Chuck to call him, it really showed my dedication and my pursuit of wanting this material out there, and for the world to know that it exists and that it's good. And I'd hope this would clarify, what the footage does exist. It is being digitized, and I hope that the rest of the world can see it, because it really shows shows Rich at his best, in my opinion, and it shows him as a real teacher and a real mentor in a way.
And Chris, I don't think you're going to have to worry about any of the footage that you want to see not being released, because now that they know Andrew knows where to find them.
There you go.
They're not gonna hold anything back.
Well, they might have me help edit their stuff, like Studio B concert. They might actually have me help edit that together, because I know the songs. So
yeah, you might work your way into an internship here.
Hope that might work out. I will say, I'll add this too. LeSEA actually, I couldn't believe it. They actually gave me a signed poster by Rich that Rich gave to the studio and signed for LeSEA the weekend of Studio B and a Canticle of the Plains performance.
Well, Andrew, this is incredible. Congratulations. I mean, your dedication on this and your follow-through on this over the past year, what a payoff for you to get invited there and get to be the first person in decades to see this footage. I'm so happy for you.
Oh, thank you so much. I still can't believe it happened, honestly. And it sounds kind of silly for a 19-year-old, kid, basically, to almost geek out over this. But I, as a fan and as someone who Rich has touched through his ministry and music, I think it's important for future generations to have this material. It's certainly worth, having out there.
Andrew Montonera, thank you for being on Between the Songs.
Thank you.
So that was Andrew Montonera, and I hope you are excited as we are to hear some of that information. And like with a lot of projects, now we just wait as fans. And so, hey, join the waiting process. But in the midst of that, you will have a Rich Mullins podcast to listen to over the next year or so. Once a month, we're going to put out main episodes. And this year, there is going to be a lot of Rich Mullins tribute projects. We're not going to go into those right now, but we'll mention more of those in our next episode. But Joe, really quickly, we talked with Jimmy Abegg in our first episode. What can you say about the Be Gods project at the moment? What's the current state of it?
Okay, so there was a lot of confusion earlier this week on the Be Gods Pledge Music project. Now, if you remember, they were down to about 27 days left of the project, 28 days maybe, and it was at 97%. And so people were really excited, thinking, wow, this thing is going to get funded, it's happening. And then from one day to the next, the percentage dropped down to 73%. Then it dropped down again to 65%, and then back up to 73%. And so it was a little bit of a ping-pong thing going on there, and we started getting a lot of messages about it because of the podcast and having Jimmy on, and we didn't really have the answers, I think, that people were looking for as to why this happened. So I contacted Jimmy this week. I had a great talk with him, and all that to say, they do have a reason that the percentage of the goal dropped, and I think you're going to be hearing from Jimmy in the next few days with an update as to what's going on with this project. But right now, I don't have the liberty to tell you exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but there are some things going on behind the scenes. They've had a lot of hiccups with this project, certain aspects of it. Even if you heard our first episode, he talked about the problems that they had getting the Ireland trip going. There's just a lot going on, and so I'm going to leave that for Jimmy. I'm pretty sure we're going to be hearing from him soon to update everybody. So for right now, that's pretty much all that's going on with that. We don't have a whole lot to say on that, but I know there's a lot of questions, and people are wondering, so we did want to address it.
Yep, so we hope to hear from Jimmy soon. One of the things I wanted to share was I had a really great opportunity this past weekend to go see Ted Yoder, the dulcimer player, in concert. And he was at a local dulcimer festival, which I didn't even know existed, but it's been going on for 29 years now, the Gebhard Dulcimer and Folk Instrument Music Festival. Ted Yoder, who does our theme song for the podcast, donated a few songs to us for us to just use. I was able to go up there and see him, and he was gracious enough to allow me to interview him afterwards. So if you check out the Post Consumer Reports podcast, that's my latest episode up there, and it was an interview with Ted Yoder, and it was great. And I mean, again, Joe, you saw him recently. This was a festival of dulcimer players, and it was quite astounding. I mean, the dulcimer is just a beautiful instrument. It's just quite amazing to listen to people play it.
It is, and what's incredible to me is that I listened to the full interview today, and by the way, great job. I really enjoyed hearing his story. I got to meet Ted and spend some time with him a few weeks ago, but the stuff that he got into with you is stuff I didn't know about him, and
yeah.
Really, he's got an incredible story.
Well, it was quite surprising. Yeah, I mean, like he has one of those stories where like something truly awful happened to him that really shifted his whole life. Helped him to kind of reset him, and he had to think, what am I doing with my life? And I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting that at all. Was not expecting that.
Yeah, and that was shocking to me. But the part that I think shocked me even just as much was that he really started taking this instrument serious around 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And 3 years after he really started, he became like the champion.
Yeah,
So you just talk about a seriously gifted musician, and if anybody has the chance to go see Ted Yoder live, he's really one of the best out there.
Yeah. His arrangements are really beautiful. And I really, really quickly just wanted to say, too, a really strange thing happened that I wasn't expecting, but there was a woman there. She was part of a workshop. She wasn't actually like a teacher, but she was just there to learn. But she had a dulcimer that was signed by Rich Mullins.
Oh, wow.
And it was quite surprising, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you should go over there." They were talking about this woman, and it was just so interesting. And I hope I recorded her telling her story really quickly, so hopefully I'll be able to get that up on YouTube, and maybe people can watch it.
That's an interesting question I have for you, having spent the day at a dulcimer festival, which I cannot say that I ever have. Traditionally speaking, it's used a lot in Appalachian music, folk music.
Yeah.
Is Rich Mullins really regarded among the dulcimer community? That's something I don't know.
I didn't talk to enough people, but a decent amount of people that I did talk to, it was yes, they knew about Rich Mullins, and Ted mentioned him in the concert. He said, "I don't know if you guys know Rich Mullins," and there was a pretty decent amount of head nods. So. Again, I do think there are a couple of communities here, which is the truly the folk music, the Appalachian music that with the deep roots. And in my interview, Ted mentions that. He says, "Yeah, I don't know all these folk tunes, but nonetheless, I think there is a decent amount of people that they pay respect to Mullins, and they know that he brought a lot of attention to the instrument." So yeah, it was great being there at this dulcimer festival, and I'm actually happy to be able to share a brief snippet of my interview with Ted. This is the part where he actually goes into Rich Mullins' influence on his life. So yeah, just want to share a little bit of that with you now.
I heard Rich. I was an aspiring keyboard player at the time. I wanted to be, Elton John, Billy Joel. And at the time, since I was, wrapped up in the CCM culture, I wanted to be the next Michael W. Smith. And
There you go.
I actually just wanted to be that popular and not necessarily be Michael W. Smith.
Well, you know what? Recently I got some old, at Goodwill, somebody said, hey, there's some old Christian records at Goodwill. You should check it out. I went there, and there's like 30 old records. Somebody just dumped off all their CCM records. Anyway, I got the first 2 Michael W. Smith albums on vinyl.
The nice Argyle sweater one.
Yeah, that neon pink Argyle sweater one. And there's another one where it's just like his head. It looks like he's in Tron.
Yes,
it's like his head floating in space, and like Tron. Anyway, but the synths on that album are amazing.
Oh yeah.
His compositions were just amazing.
Absolutely, loved it.
But
anyway, I was a synth guy.
Did you play in bands or?
Oh yeah, off and on.
Okay.
Nothing big, and just kind of traveled around. And I was a really bad. What's my word? I say the word lazy, undisciplined musician.
Okay, yeah.
I had a lot of gift, but in order to turn it into talent, I didn't do what was necessary.
Yeah.
Until I got older and
had kids. I bet.
had kids. Yeah.
I do a lot of writing, and it's when I had kids. That's when the fire was lit to do something.
Yeah.
So 7 of them, they're keeping you really busy.
Yeah. So I heard Rich play the hammered dulcimer, of course, back on First Family. It's that album.
Well, that
Never
was
Picture Perfect.
Never Picture Perfect, and it's One Thing.
One Thing.
Yeah.
And at first, when I heard that song, I thought, oh, that was that was a synth or something. It wasn't until Sometimes I Step wasn't on Winds of Heaven, was it?
No, it was on The World as Best as I Remember It, Volume 1. But I'm trying to remember what dulcimer songs might have been on Volume 1. He actually played a lap dulcimer on Who God Is Going to Use.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think if there's actual dulcimer. Volume 2 is when Sometimes by Step with,
Sure.
The chorus was on Volume 1. And then he fleshed out the song with,
See, yeah, there's other songs that I do of his that I play dulcimer with, and he never did, like Boy Like Me, Man Like You.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Those sound really cool.
So I'm trying to think, I'm starting to think of songs, but it's like, no, wait, he didn't do dulcimer on that one. Anyway, so yeah, it took me, I knew I wanted to get a hammered dulcimer, but at that point I was focusing on keyboards and piano and stuff, and so I didn't get a dulcimer until about 10 years later, 1997. So.
Yeah. So there you go. That was just a few minutes of my interview with Ted Yoder, and we will definitely have links on the Between the Songs podcast website. Please check for that there. So from there, let's look forward to our official second episode. Joe, remind our listeners what's going to be going on.
Okay, so beginning in the next episode is really when we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of what this podcast is about. We're going to start looking at Rich's music, his albums, starting with Zion's 1981 Behold the Man album. This is the first recording that Rich Mullins ever professionally made, in a studio. This is with his group Zion, part of Zion Ministries that he was involved with after college. And they made this record. You're probably not going to be able to find it by the next episode, but thankfully we've got it up on Ragamuffin Archive. We're going to make the links available on our website. You can listen to this album in its entirety, and that's what we're asking you to do. Give the album a listen, maybe listen 2 or 3 times, and then we're going to kind of have a discussion about it, go track by track, and we're looking forward to having Beth Lutz, one of Rich's good friends who was a member of the group Zion, featured with him on the album. She's going to be a guest to talk about that, as well as all this early music that she was there to be a part of with Rich Mullins during his college years and even a few years after. So that's what's going to be happening on the next episode of Between the Songs.
Yes, so please take the journey with us. Look on our website. We'll have links to the Zion album. And we're so excited to be bringing this to you and in this crazy year, this 20th anniversary of Rich Mullins' death. And we're so glad that you've been listening. Once again, this has been Rich Mullins Between the Songs podcast.